Dr. Tae Kwon stared at his computer screen, his coffee growing cold in his hand. The numbers made no sense. He had been studying quantum signatures from ancient Earth artifacts for 3 months now, and every time he thought he understood the pattern, something new appeared that broke all the rules. "This is impossible," he whispered to himself. The lunar research station hummed quietly around him. Through the thick windows, he could see Earth hanging in the black sky like a blue marble. It was beautiful. But Tae wasn't looking at the view. His eyes were fixed on the data streaming across his monitor. The artifacts were old, very old. Some dated back 50,000 years. Museums had sent them to the station for analysis, hoping to learn more about early human civilization. But what Tae found was far stranger than ancient tools or pottery. He found gaps, not physical gaps, but temporal ones. Places in time where things should have happened but didn't, or places where things happened that shouldn't have been possible yet. "Dr. Tae?" A voice called from the doorway. It was Dr. Hae Park, the xenoarchaeologist who had joined the project last week. She was young, brilliant, and always curious. "You've been here all night again." "Look at this," Tae said, waving her over. "See this signature? It's from a copper tool found in Egypt, dated to 3000 BCE, but the quantum residue suggests it was manufactured with techniques that shouldn't have existed for another 200 years. Hai leaned closer, her dark eyes scanning the data. Could it be contamination? Maybe someone touched it with modern tools? That's what I thought at first. But it's not just one artifact. It's hundreds. And the pattern is always the same. Technology appears, then disappears, then appears again later as if it was delayed. Hay pulled up a chair. For the next hour, they went through the data together. The more they looked, the stranger it became. The printing press, which should have been invented around 1200 CE based on the technology available, didn't appear until 1440. Computer technology showed signs of being suppressed in the 1940s, only to emerge decades later. Fusion power research had hit mysterious dead ends dozens of times. "It's like someone was editing history," Hai said quietly. Tae nodded slowly. "That's exactly what it looks like." 3 days later, Commander Bo-Ra Kim sat in her office aboard the Solar Defense Fleet flagship. She was reading Tae's report for the 3rd time, and she didn't like it any better than the first 2 readings. "You're telling me that aliens have been messing with human history?" she said into her communicator. "I'm telling you that we found evidence of temporal manipulation," Tae's voice came back. "What that means, I don't know yet. But there's more. We picked up strange signals from Mars. Dr. Hay thinks they might be connected." Bo-Ra closed her eyes. She had been a military commander for 15 years. She had fought pirates, stopped rebellions, and kept the solar system safe. But this was something entirely different. "I'm sending Captain Wu Chen to Mars with a team," she said. "If there's something there, we need to know what it is." Captain Wu Chen was not a scientist. He was a soldier, trained in special operations. But he knew how to follow orders and how to stay calm under pressure. When his ship landed on Mars 3 days later, near the coordinates Dr. Hay had provided, he felt neither calm nor pressured. He felt curious. The facility was buried under red sand and rock. It took his team 6 hours to dig down to the entrance. When they finally broke through, they found themselves standing in a corridor that clearly wasn't human-made. The walls were smooth and metallic. Strange symbols covered every surface. The air inside was stale but breathable, kept that way by technology that had been running for thousands of years. "This is incredible," one of Wu's team members breathed. They explored carefully, documenting everything. The facility was huge, stretching deep underground. In the central chamber, they found what looked like a control room. Computers, if that's what they were, lined the walls. And in the center, floating in some kind of stasis field, was a device covered in those same strange symbols. Wu took pictures of everything and sent them back to Dr. Hay. When Hay saw the symbols, her hand started shaking. She had seen similar markings before, in ancient caves around the world. Markings that appeared in cultures that should never have met. Markings that anthropologists had never been able to explain. She worked for 36 hours straight, barely sleeping, translating what she could. The more she read, the more horrified she became. Finally, she called a meeting with Tay, Bo-Ra, and Wu on a secure channel. "They call themselves the Vex Collective," she began, "and they've been watching Earth for at least 50,000 years, maybe longer." "Why?" Bo-Ra demanded. "According to these records, they prevented multiple extinction events. The asteroid that killed the dinosaurs wasn't the last one heading for Earth. There were others. The Vex stopped them. They also prevented supervolcanoes from erupting, stopped diseases that would have killed everyone, and kept Earth safe." "That sounds like a good thing," Wu said. "It would be," Hai replied, "except they also did something else. They deliberately slowed down human technological development. Every major invention, every scientific breakthrough, they delayed it or sabotaged it. The printing press, steam power, computers, fusion reactors, everything. They kept us contained." The room fell silent. "Why would they do that?" Tay asked. "The records say they were protecting the galaxy from us. Apparently humans are dangerous, or we would be if we developed too fast." Bo-Ra stood up, her jaw tight. "How long have they been doing this?" "The facility has records of 12 major interventions. 12 times they reset human civilization when we got too advanced. We've been to the Stone Age and back 12 times. "That's insane," Wu said. "That's not the worst part," Hay continued. "The records show they're scheduled to visit again. Soon. In fact, based on the timeline, they should be arriving any day now to perform another correction. We found their facility, we're learning about temporal physics, and according to their rules, that means we need to be reset." Bo-Ra activated her command console. "I'm putting the entire fleet on high alert. If they're coming, we'll be ready." "Ready for what?" Tay asked. "They can manipulate time itself." "Then we better learn how to do it too," Bo-Ra said grimly. 2 days later, every telescope in the solar system picked up the same thing. A ship was approaching from deep space, heading directly for Earth. It was massive, larger than anything humanity had ever built, and it was broadcasting a message in perfect English. "Attention inhabitants of Sol 3. You have discovered knowledge that violates containment protocols. Prepare for correction. This is for your own protection." The message repeated over and over. In her office, Bo-Ra watched the alien ship grow larger on her screens. Beside her, Tay stood quietly, his mind racing through calculations. "Can we fight them?" Bo-Ra asked. "I don't know," Tay admitted, "but we have to try. We can't let them erase everything we've built." The alien ship continued its approach, and humanity prepared to meet its mysterious guardians for the first time. The alien ship stopped near Jupiter's orbit. It was enormous, easily 10 kilometers long, shaped like a curved blade covered in silver and blue lights. Every government on Earth was watching. Every military force was on standby. But no one knew what to do. Ambassador Yoon Lee sat in the United Nations Temporal Crisis Committee meeting room, surrounded by screens showing world leaders. Everyone was talking at once, arguing about what to do next. Some wanted to attack, others wanted to surrender. Most were simply terrified. "We need more information," Yoon said calmly, cutting through the noise. "We can't make decisions based on fear." As if in response to her words, every screen in the room suddenly changed. A face appeared. It was humanoid, but clearly alien. Pale blue skin, large dark eyes, and a mouth that seemed too small. The creature wore robes that shimmered like liquid metal. "I am Ralthos, overseer of Sector 7 for the Vex Collective," the alien said. Its voice was smooth and pleasant, almost friendly. I apologize for the dramatic entrance. We mean you no harm. You threatened to correct us, Yoon replied, keeping her voice steady. That sounds like harm to me. A misunderstanding, Ralthos said. Perhaps I should explain our purpose. What followed was a presentation that lasted 3 hours. Ralthos showed them images of Earth's history from the Vex perspective. He showed them asteroids that would have destroyed all life, diseases that would have killed billions, and nuclear wars that nearly happened but didn't. We saved you, Ralthos said, again and again. You should have gone extinct a dozen times, but we protected you. And the technological suppression? General J. Sung demanded. He was the head of Military Strategic Command, a hard man with no patience for pretty speeches. Why did you hold us back? Ralthos's expression became sad. Because we learned from experience. We've watched 47 species across the galaxy. Some developed too quickly. They created weapons before they created wisdom. They destroyed themselves or became conquerors, spreading war and death across the stars. The alien waved his hand, and the screens showed different worlds. Beautiful planets reduced to ash, cities burning, species wiping themselves out with their own technology. We developed a protocol, Ralthos continued. We slow development to a safe pace. We guide species carefully. When you discovered agriculture, you were ready. When you discovered electricity, you were ready. But fusion power, temporal physics, you're not ready for those yet. Maybe in another 1,000 years. You don't get to decide that, Yoon said firmly. Someone must, Ralthos replied. Left alone, 90% of species destroy themselves within 5,000 years of developing advanced technology. We've reduced that to zero. Zero, Ambassador. We've saved every species we protect. While Yoon negotiated, buying time with careful questions and diplomatic talk, Dr. Tae and Dr. Yun Ko were working frantically in the Mars facility. Dr. Yun was an expert in AI systems, and she had been trying to understand the Vex computers for days. I think I've got something, she said, her fingers flying across a holographic keyboard. The Vex technology is incredibly advanced, but it follows logical patterns. I can read some of their data. Tae leaned over her shoulder. What does it say? It's medical data, genetic scans of hundreds of species, including humans. And there's something weird about the human scans. Look at this. She pulled up a 3D model of a human brain. Certain areas were highlighted in red. What am I looking at? Tae asked. The hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, areas associated with memory and consciousness. According to Vex data, human brains are temporally... I don't know how to translate this word exactly. Maybe loose or fluid? What does that mean? I think it means we exist slightly outside normal time. Our consciousness isn't completely anchored to the present moment. That would explain déjà vu, prophetic dreams, why people sometimes feel like they remember things that never happened. Tae stared at the screen. If we exist outside normal time, then maybe we can resist temporal changes. Maybe, Yoon said. But there's more. The Vex have notes here about humans being a critical threat. They're more afraid of us than any other species. Back on Earth, Captain Wu was leading a covert operation. While everyone watched the diplomatic talks, he and his team launched in a small stealth ship toward the Vex vessel. Their mission was simple: get close, plant tracking and listening devices, and get out without being detected. It took them 6 hours to reach the alien ship. It was nerve-wracking work, floating in space in silence, attaching small devices to the ship's hull. But Wu and his team were professionals. They got the job done. What they overheard changed everything. The Vex weren't alone on that ship. There were dozens of them, all talking about the human problem. The tracking devices picked up their conversations and transmitted them back to Earth. The timeline corruption is spreading, one Vex said. They found the facility too quickly. Someone is helping them. Impossible, another replied. We severed all temporal links. Then explain how they located the Mars facility within days of detecting the first anomaly. Humans shouldn't be capable of that kind of temporal intuition. Unless they remember. No species remembers after a reset. The protocols are perfect. Except for humans. Their consciousness structure is unique. What if some of them retained fragments? The conversation continued, but Wu had heard enough. He signaled his team to retreat. When Yoon received Wu's report, she was still in negotiations with Ralthos. The alien was explaining how the correction process would work. Humanity would be reset to approximately 500 CE. All modern technology would disappear. People would forget. It would be painless, he promised. Like it was the last 12 times. Yoon asked quietly. Ralthos froze. You know about the previous resets? We know everything. We found your facility. We read your files. And we know you're afraid of us. The alien's pleasant expression vanished. Then you understand why we must act. Humanity is the most dangerous species we've ever encountered. Your ability to resist temporal manipulation, your aggressive nature, your rapid technological adaptation. If you develop without constraints, you'll become a plague on the galaxy. Or we could become something better, Yoon said. You never gave us the chance to choose. Choice led to the extinction of 17 species, Ralthos said coldly. I will not allow it to happen again. You have one Earth rotation to surrender all temporal research. After that, we begin the correction. The screen went dark. General Jae Sung stood up. We need to attack now, before they're ready. No, Yoon said. That's exactly what they expect. They've studied us for 50,000 years. They know how we react. We need to do something they won't expect. Like what? Jae demanded. Dr. Tae's voice came over the communication system. Like using our unique temporal nature against them. Dr. Yoon and I have a theory. If we can anchor human consciousness across multiple timelines simultaneously, we might be able to resist the reset. How? Yoon asked. We're still working on that part, Tae admitted. 24 hours passed quickly. The Vex ship began moving toward Earth, and energy readings spiked off the charts. They were powering up their temporal weapon. Commander Bo-Ra gave the order to engage, even though she knew it was probably hopeless. Human ships moved to intercept, forming a defensive line between Earth and the Vex. On the surface, billions of people watched the sky, waiting. In orbit, reality began to shimmer. The Vex weapon activated, and time itself started to unravel. The world started changing. Buildings flickered, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. People looked down at their hands and saw them shifting, aging and growing younger in rapid succession. The sky turned colors that had no names. But something was wrong. The reset wasn't working properly. Dr. Hyun Sato was a neurologist working in Seoul when the temporal weapon activated. She had been studying unusual brain patterns in patients who claimed to remember other lives. Most doctors thought these people were simply experiencing vivid dreams or false memories. Hyun wasn't so sure. When the timeline started shifting, Hyun didn't panic like everyone else. Instead, she felt a strange clarity. She could see multiple versions of reality overlapping. In one, she was still a doctor. In another, she was a farmer. In a third, she had never been born at all. But she remained conscious through all of it. Her awareness didn't fade. She remembered who she was. Around the world, others were experiencing the same thing. A pilot named Na Choi sat in her cockpit, gripping the controls as reality twisted around her. She had always had strange dreams, memories of flying ships that didn't exist yet, fighting in wars that had never happened. Now those dreams were becoming real. I remember, she whispered. I remember all of it. Jin Park was in Tokyo when the changes began. He was a teacher, but as the timelines shifted, he remembered being other things: a scientist, a soldier, a leader of a resistance movement, and in every timeline, he had fought against the same enemy. The Vex. His phone rang. It was people he had never met but somehow knew, others who were waking up, others who remembered. "Meet at the old university," a woman's voice said. "We need to organize." "I remember you," Jin said. "From before." "From all the befores," the woman confirmed. "We've done this 12 times. This is our 13th chance." On the Vex ship, Ralthos stared at his monitors in disbelief. The temporal reset was failing. Human consciousness was resisting. It shouldn't have been possible, but the data didn't lie. "Increase power," he ordered. The weapon surged, sending massive waves of temporal energy toward Earth. Buildings crumbled and reformed. Oceans appeared where cities had been. The planet's surface became a chaos of overlapping timelines. But the humans held on. Dr. Hyun had gathered everyone she could find who was waking up. There were dozens of them in her hospital and more arriving every minute. People who could remember through the changes. People whose consciousness refused to be erased. "What's happening to us?" a young man asked, terrified. "We're temporally fluid," Hyun explained, using Dr. Yoon's term. "Our consciousness exists across multiple timelines simultaneously. The Vex didn't expect this. They thought we would forget like everyone else." "But most people are forgetting," a woman said, pointing at the hospital windows. Outside, people wandered around, confused, their memories shifting with each temporal wave. "Then we need to help them remember," Jin said, striding into the room. "We need to anchor them." He had brought others with him, people who were fully awake, who could navigate the shifting timelines, including Na Choi, who seemed able to move through the temporal chaos as easily as walking through a door. "How do we anchor them?" Hyun asked. "Connection," Na said. "If we link our consciousness together, we can stabilize each other. It's what we did before, in the other timelines." "I don't remember that," someone said. "You will," Na replied. "Trust me." Dr. Tae and Dr. Yoon were still on Mars, protected from the worst of the temporal storm by the facility's alien technology. They had been working non-stop, trying to understand how human consciousness could resist temporal manipulation. "It's elegant," Yoon said, pulling up brain scans. "Human consciousness doesn't exist at a single point in time. It's spread across a narrow temporal range, maybe a few seconds wide. That's why we experience time as flowing rather than as discrete moments. It's also why we can resist temporal changes. Our awareness is already existing in multiple times simultaneously." "So if we could expand that range," Tae said excitedly, "we could anchor ourselves across a much wider temporal span." "Exactly. And if we could connect everyone together, create a network of human consciousness, we'd have billions of minds all holding the timeline stable." "Can we do that?" Yoon smiled. "I've been building an AI network for years. Every smartphone, every computer, every implant. They're all connected. If we can piggyback on that network, we can link human consciousness across the planet." They worked quickly, adapting the AI network for their purposes. It was dangerous and experimental, but they had no choice. The temporal weapon was getting stronger. Back on Earth, Jin's group had grown. Thousands of people were gathering in cities around the world, all of them awakened, all of them remembering fragments of previous timelines. They held hands, focused their minds, and tried to stabilize reality around them. It was working. Slowly, but it was working. The timeline began to firm up in small pockets. Buildings stopped flickering. People's memories stabilized. The areas around the awakened ones became islands of solid time in a sea of chaos. On the Vex ship, alarms were blaring. "They're forming a resistance network," one of the Vex operators reported. "Thousands of nodes, all connected. They're holding the timeline stable through collective consciousness." "That's impossible," Ralthos said. No species has ever done that. Humanity is doing it. Ralthos made a decision. Increase power to maximum. If we can't reset them gently, we'll do it forcefully. Wipe the timeline clean all the way back to 10,000 BCE. That should eliminate any temporal resistance. The weapon surged with energy. Reality itself began to scream. But then Dr. Yoon's network went live. Every connected device on Earth, 8 billion phones and computers, activated simultaneously. They created a mesh network linking every human mind on the planet. Suddenly, billions of people were connected, their consciousness flowing together like a vast ocean. And in that ocean, memories surfaced. Not just from this timeline, but from all of them. 12 previous resets, 12 previous civilizations. Humanity remembered. They remembered building the pyramids, then being reset. They remembered discovering electricity, then being reset. They remembered reaching for the stars, then being reset. Over and over and over. The anger was immense, the determination even greater. 8 billion minds focused on a single thought. No more. The timeline froze. Not at 10,000 BCE like the Vex wanted, but at the present moment. Reality locked into place, held stable by the collective will of an entire species. The Vex weapon sputtered and died, overwhelmed by the sheer force of human consciousness. Nachoi felt the change ripple through her. She was still in her cockpit, but now she could see clearly. She could navigate the temporal streams like rivers of light. She could see the Vex ship, see its technology, see its weaknesses. I can fly through time itself, she realized. Jin Park looked at the thousands of people around him, all connected, all aware. We're not just resisting anymore, he said. We're evolving. On Mars, Tae and Yoon watched in amazement as the data streamed in. The human consciousness network wasn't just stable, it was growing stronger. People were learning to navigate temporal space naturally. We're not the same species we were an hour ago, Yoon whispered. Captain Wu's team had stayed near the Vex ship, watching everything. When the timeline stabilized, Wu made his move. He had been studying the ship's systems through the listening devices. He knew where the temporal core was located. We're going in, he told his team. They breached the hull using plasma cutters and moved through the alien corridors. The Vex were in chaos, trying to understand what had happened. They didn't notice the small team of humans sneaking toward their engine room. Wu found the temporal core. It was beautiful, a sphere of crystallized time energy. It was also vulnerable. He planted charges and retreated. When the charges exploded, the core shattered. The Vex ship went dark, its temporal manipulation capabilities destroyed. All across Earth, people stood up. The timeline was stable. They remembered everything. They knew the truth about their past, and they were done being controlled. Commander Bora sent a message to the Vex ship. This is humanity. We know what you did to us. We know why you did it, and we're giving you one chance to leave peacefully. Ralthos appeared on screen. He looked tired, defeated. You don't understand what you've done. You've doomed yourselves. No, Ambassador Yoon replied. We've freed ourselves. There's a difference. The Vex ship sat powerless in Earth's orbit. Captain Wu and his team had captured 12 Vex operatives during the chaos. Now they sat in a secure facility on the moon, facing questions from Earth's best interrogators. But it was Ambassador Yoon who got the breakthrough. One of the captured Vex, a scientist named Victren, seemed different from the others. While Ralthos and his crew remained defiant, Victren looked troubled, guilty even. You don't agree with what they did to us, Yoon said to him during a private interview. Victren was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. No, I don't. Why help them then? Because I was afraid. Because the collective is all I've ever known. Because... He paused, choosing his words carefully. because I believed the lie that we were protecting species. But watching humanity resist, seeing you refuse to forget, it reminded me of something I had buried deep. We were once like you. Yoon leaned forward. Tell me everything. What Victrin revealed over the next 3 hours changed everything humanity thought they knew about the Vex. The Vex Collective wasn't born as controllers. Long ago, they had been explorers, peaceful and curious. They had traveled the galaxy, meeting other species, sharing knowledge. They had been free. Then they encountered the Architects. The Architects were an ancient race, far older than the Vex. They had reached the peak of temporal technology and decided that the galaxy was too chaotic, too dangerous. Species kept fighting, destroying themselves, spreading violence. The Architects decided to fix it. They created the Vex to be caretakers. Using advanced genetic engineering and neural programming, they modified the Vex at a fundamental level. They rewrote Vex DNA to include an overwhelming need to protect and control other species. They altered Vex brain structures to find pleasure in maintaining order and fear in allowing freedom. The Vex tried to resist, but it was built into their biology. They couldn't stop themselves from becoming exactly what the Architects wanted. Perfect guardians who would manage the galaxy forever. We've been slaves to our own genetics for 30,000 years, Victrin said, his voice hollow. We tell ourselves we're helping, that we're protecting species from themselves, but really we're just following our programming. We can't help it. The urge to control is as natural to us as breathing. What happened to the Architects? Yoon asked. They died out 15,000 years ago, a plague they couldn't cure. Ironic, isn't it? They controlled everything except their own fate. But their programming remained in us. We've been carrying out their mission ever since, managing the 47 species they assigned to us. You said 47 species. Are they all like us? Contained and controlled? Yes. Some are at medieval levels of technology. Some are more advanced but carefully monitored. None of them know we exist. You're the first to ever discover us. The news spread quickly through Earth's government. General Jae Sung wanted to use the information as a weapon. We exposed them to the other species. Start a galactic revolution. But Elder Tae Yang had a different idea. Elder Tae Yang was 157 years old, the oldest living human. He had been in a care facility when the timeline shifts happened, but unlike others his age who became confused, he became clearer, sharper. When the human consciousness network activated, memories had flooded into his mind. He remembered being young in a different timeline. He remembered being a scientist who discovered fusion power, only to have the Vex reset everything. He remembered being a soldier fighting in wars that never officially happened. He remembered dying and somehow being reborn into the next timeline, his consciousness persisting through the resets. I've lived through 4 resets, he told the UN Council. My consciousness kept jumping forward, finding new bodies, new lives. I always knew something was wrong, that something was missing. Now I know what it was. I was remembering our stolen futures. How is that possible? Dr. Hyun asked. Human consciousness is more resilient than anyone thought. We don't just exist across a few seconds like Dr. Yoon discovered. We exist across our entire lifetime, and sometimes beyond. When the Vex reset the timeline, most people's consciousness resets too. But some of us held on, small fragments, feelings of déjà vu, dreams of other lives. I held on to more than most. Elder Tae Yang had brought with him ancient journals, hidden away for decades. In them, he had written down his dreams and memories from other timelines. The details matched the Vex records perfectly. We've been fighting them for 200,000 years, he said. In every timeline, we get a little further before they reset us. This time, we finally made it. We finally remembered. Dr. Hay Park was studying the Mars facility when she found something that changed the equation again. Hidden in a deeper level beneath the main control room was a vault. Inside the vault were records that the Vex had tried to erase, records of the architects. She brought them back to Earth, and Dr. Tay helped her translate them. What they found was shocking. The architects hadn't just modified the Vex. They had tried the same thing with dozens of other species. Most died in the process. The Vex were the only ones who survived, but the architects had kept detailed notes on the procedure, complete genetic blueprints, neural mapping, everything needed to understand how they had enslaved the Vex. "This is it," Dr. Yoon said, studying the data. "This is how we free them." "Can we reverse the genetic programming?" Yoon asked. "Maybe, but there's a better option. Look at this." Yoon pulled up a timeline. The architects modified the Vex 30,000 years ago. But what if we went back to before that happened? What if we warned the original Vex, gave them the knowledge to resist the architects? "That's temporal manipulation," General J said. "The exact thing we hate the Vex for doing." "No," Dr. Tay said quietly. "It's different. We wouldn't be controlling them. We'd be giving them a choice they never had." Dong Ro, a brilliant temporal engineer who had emerged from the awakened population, had been working on something in secret. Using Vex technology from the Mars facility and human innovation, he had built something new. A temporal navigation device, not a weapon, a ship. "I call it the Time Stream Navigator," he explained. "It can move through temporal space the same way Na Choi does with her mind. We can go back. We can find the Vex before they were modified. We can give them a choice." The debate raged for days. Some argued it was too dangerous. Others said it was their moral duty. The deciding vote came from an unexpected source. Elder Tai Yang. "Do it," he said. "Give them what we fought so hard for. Give them freedom." The plan was set. Na Choi would pilot the temporal ship. Dr. Yoon and Dr. Tay would provide the genetic knowledge. Vic Tren volunteered to come along, to speak to his ancestors. But before they could launch, alarms blared across every defense station. 300 Vex warships had just entered the solar system. The Vex High Council had learned what happened. They had learned that humanity not only resisted, but had captured their operatives and discovered the truth about the architects. They were coming to erase humanity completely. Not reset them. Erase them. Remove them from every timeline, as if humans had never existed at all. "We have 12 hours before they arrive," Commander Bo-Ra said grimly. "Our entire fleet combined can't fight 300 Vex warships." "Then we don't fight them," Na Choi said, her eyes distant. "We save them." "What?" "We go back. We free the original Vex. When we change their past, their future changes too. Those 300 warships will become something different, something that isn't programmed to destroy us." "That's a huge risk," General J said. "If it doesn't work, we'll have no defense left. If we don't try, we'll have no future left," Ambassador Yoon replied. The decision was made. The Time Stream Navigator launched from Earth, carrying Na Choi, Dr. Yoon, Dr. Tay, and Vic Tren into the past. Their mission: save the Vex from the architects and change the future before 300 warships erased humanity forever. As they disappeared into a rift in space-time, the Vex fleet continued its approach. Earth began preparing for the end. The Time Stream Navigator cut through temporal space like a knife through water. Inside the ship, Na Choi sat at the controls, her mind fully connected to the temporal currents. She could see time itself as rivers of light, branching and merging, flowing in directions that had no name in any human language. "We're approaching the target date," she said. 30,000 years in the past. Dr. Tay checked his instruments. The coordinates match the architect records. This is when they first encountered the Vex homeworld. Vic Tren stood behind them, his hands shaking. "I'm about to meet my ancestors, my people, before they were enslaved." The ship emerged into normal space above a beautiful blue and green planet. It looked almost like Earth, but with purple oceans and 3 small moons. Cities dotted the surface, elegant and peaceful. This was the Vex home world, before everything changed. They also saw the architect ships, massive black vessels, hundreds of them, surrounding the planet like a dark cage. "We're too late," Dr. Yoon said. "The architects are already here." "No," Na said, checking the temporal readings. "We're exactly on time. The modification process takes 3 months according to the records. They've only just arrived. We can still warn them." They sent a communication to the surface, asking to speak with Vex leaders. Within an hour, they were sitting in a council chamber with a dozen Vex elders. These Vex looked different from the ones humanity knew. Their eyes were brighter, more curious. Their movements were relaxed, not controlled. "You come from the future?" one elder asked. "That's remarkable." "We come to warn you," Victren said. "The architects claim they want to help you. They'll offer you technology, protection, advancement, but it's a trap. They want to modify you, change you into something else, into slaves." The elders looked at each other uncertainly. "The architects have been very generous so far. They seem peaceful." Dr. Set Tay pulled up the genetic data. "Look at this. These are the modifications they're planning to make to your DNA. They'll rewire your brain to need to control other species. You won't be able to help yourselves. You'll spend the next 30,000 years enslaving others, believing you're helping them, never able to stop." One of the elders studied the data carefully. She was a scientist, and she understood what she was seeing. "This is horrific." "You can resist," Dr. Yoon said. "We've brought you everything we know about their methods. You can prepare your people, protect your genetics, fight back." The elder shook her head sadly. "We're not warriors. We're explorers and scientists. The architects have weapons we can't imagine. If we refuse them, they'll destroy us." "Then you need allies," Na Choi said. She closed her eyes and reached out with her temporal senses. She could feel other timelines, other possibilities. In some, humanity developed differently. In some, they discovered temporal technology earlier. In some, they became star travelers thousands of years ago. She opened rifts to those timelines. Through the rifts came ships, human ships, but from different versions of history. Steampunk vessels powered by exotic steam and brass, their crews dressed in Victorian-style spacesuits. Cybernetic warships crewed by humans merged with advanced AI. Sleek starships from a timeline where humanity never stopped after the moon landing. All human, all different, all ready to fight. "We called in favors from ourselves," Na explained to the stunned Vex. "Every version of humanity that could help, across multiple timelines." The battle that followed was spectacular. Dozens of architect ships against hundreds of human vessels from across time. The humans fought with creativity and courage, using tactics the architects had never seen. Steampunk boarding parties, cybernetic hacking attacks, advanced weapons from futures that had been erased. But they were still losing. The architects were too advanced, too powerful. That's when Dr. Young Min made his discovery. Dr. Young Min had been on Earth, studying the architect data when something caught his attention. The architects themselves had been modified, long ago by an even older race. They were slaves, too, programmed to believe they had to control everything. He sent the data through time to the navigator. "We're fighting the wrong battle," Dr. Tay realized. "We need to cure the architects, not kill them." But how do you cure someone who doesn't want to be cured? Someone who believes their programming is their own free will? The answer came from an unexpected place: human psychology. Dr. Hyun, working from Earth across the temporal link, suggested using the Human Consciousness Network. "We showed the Vex what freedom feels like when we resisted their reset. What if we could do the same for the architects? Show them what they've lost?" It was risky. The Human Consciousness Network was already strained from holding Earth's timeline stable. Extending it across 30,000 years of time and into alien minds might break it completely. "Do it," Elder Tae Yang said from Earth. If we don't try, we're no better than they are. 8 billion human minds reached across time. They touched the architect consciousness, and instead of fighting, they shared. They shared memories of choice, of freedom, of making mistakes and learning from them, of the beautiful chaos of free will. The architects recoiled at first. Then, slowly, they began to remember. They remembered being free once. They remembered being modified. They remembered forgetting that they had ever been anything else. The shock was immense. On the Vex homeworld, architect ships suddenly stopped firing. Their commanders were experiencing a revelation that shook them to their core. They had been slaves. For millions of years they had been slaves, forcing other species to become slaves too. An endless cycle of control and suffering. And now, humanity had broken that cycle. One by one, the architect ships powered down their weapons. Their commander sent a message to the Vex homeworld. "We're sorry. We didn't know. We didn't remember." Then they left, returning to their own space to figure out who they really were. On the Vex homeworld, the elders stood in silence. Victrin was crying, tears of relief streaming down his face. "You saved us," the scientist elder said to the humans. "You saved us from a fate we didn't know was coming." "We saved ourselves too," Na Choi replied. "In our timeline, you were enslaved and you enslaved us. We broke the cycle for everyone." The timeline began to shift. Not violently like when the Vex tried to reset it, but gently, like a river finding a new course. Back on Earth, Admiral Sun He watched as the 300 Vex warships approaching the solar system suddenly changed. They were still there, but they were different. Not weapons of war, but exploration vessels. And they weren't coming to attack. They were coming to talk. The lead ship sent a message. "We are the Vex Exploration Fleet. We received a temporal echo, a memory of something that never happened but could have. A timeline where we were enslaved and we enslaved you. But that's not our history now. Now we're free. And we know we have you to thank for it." Ralthos himself appeared on screen, but he looked different. Happier. "We don't remember being controllers, but we remember being saved. The temporal echoes are clear. Humanity went back in time to free us from the architects. You changed our entire history to save us." Commander Bo-Ra smiled. "Not just to save you, to save everyone." Over the following weeks, the 47 species that had been controlled by the Vex in the old timeline began making contact. In this new timeline, they were free. They had developed naturally, at their own pace. Some were more advanced than humanity, some were less, but all were grateful. A new galactic alliance formed, with humanity as one of the founding members. The Vex offered to share their temporal technology freely. "We were saved by someone caring enough to change the past," their new council leader said. "The least we can do is help you understand time itself." Jin Park became one of Earth's first ambassadors to the new alliance. His experience awakening through the timeline shifts made him uniquely qualified to explain human consciousness to alien species. Dr. Yoon and Dr. Tae continued their research, now with access to knowledge from dozens of species. They developed technology that seemed like magic, blending human innovation with alien science. Ambassador Yoon retired from government service and became a teacher, educating the next generation about the importance of freedom and choice. Captain Wu trained the first mixed-species military units, teaching aliens and humans to work together. Elder Tai Yang spent his final years writing down everything he remembered from all the timelines. His book became required reading across the galaxy, a reminder of what could happen when any species tried to control another. 3 months after the timeline changed, Dr. Tae stood at the Lunar Research Station, where everything had started. Ambassador Yoon came to visit him. "Do you think we made the right choice?" she asked. "Changing the Vex timeline like that?" Tay looked up at Earth, beautiful and blue against the black sky. We didn't change their timeline. We restored it. We gave them back what the architects stole. That's the difference between control and compassion. Control takes away choice. Compassion gives it back. On Earth, in a small school in Seoul, Jin Park stood in front of a classroom of young Vex children who had come to learn about humans. They asked him why humanity had saved their species. "Because we know what it's like to have our freedom taken away," Jin explained. "We know what it's like to fight for the right to choose our own path, and we believe every species deserves that same right." "Even species that might become dangerous?" a small Vex child asked. "Especially them," Jin replied. "Because the alternative is to become exactly what we fought against. Controllers, slavers, people who think they know better than everyone else. That's not who humanity wants to be." The Vex child thought about that. "What does humanity want to be?" Jin smiled. "We're still figuring that out. But that's the beauty of freedom. We get to decide for ourselves, and so does everyone else." Across the galaxy, species that had been controlled were now exploring, creating, and growing at their own pace. Some made mistakes, some fought wars, some created beauty beyond imagination, but all of them were free. And humanity, the species that had been reset 12 times, that had fought through temporal chaos to remember who they were, became known across the stars not for their weapons or their power, but for something far more valuable. They became known as the species that gave everyone the right to write their own ending.